Hello everyone, and welcome again to my audiovisual channel. My name is Gabriela Handal, I'm a draftsman, and today I want to do another video of the style of that previous portrait one, sort of. Hopefully it's not, I don't know, that one felt very something. Anyway, hopefully it's not like that. Today I want to draw an eyeball. I actually haven't drawn in, I don't know, like 2 weeks because I was making Christmas ornaments for family and friends and cleaning. And this week I recorded like 3 podcast episodes for future publishing. I'm trying that at my husband's suggestion, and so I have the next following 3 weeks free of podcast stuff, which is very exciting to have like that big chunk of time available that way. And well, so this is going to be a video that I'm going to publish in the coming weeks. And I want to draw an eyeball for you. I think that is comfortable enough for me to be able to play and draw a little bit after not having done so for the undetermined amount of time. I don't really know how long it's been. Anyway, let me show you the tools that I have taken out to use. First, we have a pencil. This is a nondescript pencil, or, well, it was descript, but I shaved off the part that said stupid things because I thought they were stupid. And somehow they made the wood of the wood jacket black, which is pretty cool. So the pencil looks pretty cool. It didn't need any of the stupid thing it said. I don't remember what it was, but it was dumb, which is why I shaved it off. I have a big eraser, big rubber eraser. I think this one's a Staedtler, but I'm not sure. Staedtler erasers of this kind are cool, but I think they're usually smaller. I think. I'm not sure. They could be the size. Anyway, this is just one of those white erasers that I have already tried so that I know that it doesn't... So I already know it doesn't stain paper when I use it. Pencil sharpener. Just a regular one. My dad gave me this one. It's kind of like a fun one. I mean, I'm not trying to sell it or anything. But the thing about this one is that it's not a blade like I typically use because I'm not trying to... Today I'm not going to get precious or anything with the drawing. This kind of eraser, which I don't actually know what it's called. I think this one's Faber-Castell. Let me see if I have a bigger one to show you, but this one can be put into a pencil extender, as you can see. Oh yeah, here it is. It's this kind of eraser, Faber-Castell. And this one, which is not this kind, as you saw when I took it out, the one I have only has this pink end, but this one has the white kind of eraser. This is a harsh one. But anyway, it's this one. The number might be different for this one that I have in here in the pencil extender, but I don't know the number. This kind of eraser and this kind of eraser, which is a Tombow mono eraser. It's Tombow? Yeah, it's Tombow. And that's how they compare in size. One's tiny and the other one's bigger. And I guess a thing that I like about this one is that you can make a different shape. I mean, you can cut into these two as well, obviously, but you know, anyway, that's cool. And this time I might use this. I mean, I may or may not. I took it out anyway because I typically use the little broom back here if I don't want to stick my hands in the drawing. You know, whenever I erase and like instead of going with my hand like this, I use this. And a soft bristle brush, which I have brought out a handful of times, and I made a whole video about making shadows and tone with this device. This is a soft bristle brush. It's pretty small. And this is a kneading, blending stump. Speaking of kneading, this is a blending stump. And it's also relatively small. Can I show you? Maybe I should just get a ruler. Right here. Let's see. So you can see the sizes of these. They're tiny. So what is that? Like just over an eighth? Like what? Anyway, whatever. Maybe, I mean, hopefully that's good enough. This is like what, 1/4 of an inch? And that one, I guess, within 1/4 of an inch. You can see they're small. That's what I'm going to use because I'm going to work in this very small area here. And, oh, well, actually 2 more. The kneading eraser. And I took out this graphite powder, which I didn't for the previous video of this style, but I took it out just in case I feel like it. Alright, so I think that's it. Let's start. Not sharpening now because it's just the starting part. Alright, so an eyeball. Alright, I can see within this area that I delineated here, the edges, it's like this is part of the edge. I'm just amused by this tool that I'm using because I have that uncomfortable setup I told you about still. Not sure what to do about that yet, but if you have suggestions, maybe you can let me know. Or suggest a video that I can watch of somebody showing, you know, their hands drawing with a setup that isn't the overhead one, because that would not work for me. Maybe I can get like a body cam or something. That would be interesting. Alright, an eyeball. Alright, so if you remember the portrait sketch from Imagination, we used an oval, a vertical oval like this. It was wider, but you know what I mean. So for the eyeball, we're going to use a horizontal one. And you don't necessarily have to start that way, but that's how I'm going to start, because you could just draw the almond, right? But I guess I want to draw the almond within this shape. And I would say that the almond shape applies to basically every eye shape, because I think the point of calling the eyeball shape an almond is that, so if I draw an almond, almonds are like this, they're pointy on both sides like that. And so I think the point of saying the eyes are almond shaped is precisely that they're pointy on both sides, and that is indeed what happens basically with the eye, regardless of their size or whatever. Okay, so almond shape, that's the top, and this is gonna be the bottom. Depending on what you're trying to do, the lateral could be higher versus the medial being farther down, and that's typically considered a flattering, good-looking sort of eye. I mean, you know, you can of course have that kind of eye on an ugly person, but whatever. Whether the inner and outer corners of the eyes are placed this way depends on the person. They aren't always that way. Sometimes they actually are like an almond in that their inner and outer corner are on the same horizontal line. But those are that's just one of the many things you can play with when you're making an eye shape, or when you're making an eye. All right, so I have my top and bottom of the eye. And all right, so I want to make now, so this is the bottom lid, I guess, or part of the bottom lid. But what I want to do is kind of this place in here towards the medial corner of the eye, or internal, where you have kind of this slight upward type thing there. You know, sometimes it's more obvious than others, sometimes it's barely there, but I like doing it, so I'm doing it. Right, so that's an eyeball. You know, it's not finished, but that's a shape that we're gonna start with. And so, all right, I don't remember certain names right now, but there's a membrane that's kind of like the transition from the, I forgot what this is called, damn it. All right, from this little, well, I mean, I think of it as a little tiny pillow, all right? Here, in the inner corner of the eye, it's kind of like a transition from that tissue to kind of like the sclera, or the white of the eye. And I sort of follow kind of like the line of this bottom lash, like that. Did you see that? It's kind of like this. Okay, and it may not come out that much. You know, it might be very small, like in there, but it's definitely kind of, you know, this tissue is laying over the globe of the eye, just like the top and bottom lid. So it's gonna be rounded wherever you put it. All right, so it's kind of like that. And yes. So the pillow, that's really annoying that I don't remember that name, because I researched all those names for a class that I was going to teach, and then I never taught it, so that's probably why I don't remember, because I didn't say the names often. I didn't have to use the names often enough, only while I was researching it. Anyway, that tiny pillow isn't exactly kind of sticking out like that. It's sort of nestled in here, kind of like this. Okay, and then we have that tissue, which again, I don't remember. All right. So I'm gonna refine a little bit these lines, or, you know, erase those lines that I don't want anymore. I like this eye shape. And right. And so if you notice what I did back here in the lateral corner of the eye, this top lid kind of came down over, you know, farther than the bottom line, the lower lash line, and it kind of, you know, cuts it there. And that's because that's basically what the lids do. The top lid goes a little bit beyond the bottom lid. It kind of supersedes it, and it's like on top of it, kind of goes on top of it like that. So that's the reason for that. Okay, and all right, let's make a few more notes of stuff. Well, I mean, I have to do upper lid, lower lid, other things. Okay, so I'm gonna go and, you know, of course, iris and pupil, this type of stuff. And I will draw an eyebrow too at some point, or maybe sooner than we think. Okay, so let's do the iris. So the iris is more or less in the center of this exposed sclera of the eye. Okay, and not necessarily perfect circles, but they look like perfect circles. So when you're drawing one, you kind of want to try to make it as circly as you can. Sometimes there's a bit of exposed sclera under the iris there, but it's pretty common that the top part of the circle of the iris is partially covered by the top lid, like this. Okay. Okay. So the other thing that we're going to draw is the pupil. The pupil and the iris are concentric circles, meaning that they have the same center. So this is one circle, its center is here, and the pupil is a smaller circle within the iris. It's smaller, but it has the same center, like that. Okay? So what I do is, and this might sound kind of absurd or whatever, but kind of try to keep this new circle that I'm drawing in here of the edge to kind of keep the same distance from the iris edge. Or that's what I think of when I'm doing it, right? Because that helps me to have a good placement of the pupil. And of course we're using graphite, which means that we can erase if we have to move something around. Okay? And I'm not measuring anything, just eyeballing stuff. I'm not looking at a picture, I'm drawing from imagination. Right, so that looks about right. So so these areas are similar kind of in area, but obviously it's not the same because they're not the same because this area has the point over here and this one is rounded out by this membrane. But it's more or less similar. It's more or less a similar amount of, you know, like open space, I guess. And you know, sometimes the bottom part here, sometimes there is sclera exposed there and sometimes there isn't. You know, that's variable. Sometimes, I don't remember what the circumstances are. I think it's like some kind of sodium or iodine issue. I don't remember that. In that case, the person, you'll be able to see kind of like the top circle of the iris there. And the person looks surprised, you know. I don't know what that's called. Anyway, I want to draw now the bottom water line. Okay. I don't remember the medical name for that, but in makeup, that is where you put eyeliner. Or also where you tightline. But, or actually, I think it's, I don't remember now. Tightlining is on the top waterline for sure. I don't remember in the bottom lash line. I think it might just be eyeliner. Whatever. The thing is that it's like a little ledge that echoes this outer line that I just made. So I'm gonna do that. It's a very short, it's like, I mean, like, you know, this distance here from this line that I started to the first line that I made, very short, not very wide. And I'm gonna sharpen my pencil now. Even though we're still not doing details, or, you know, I guess it's more detail-y than it should be. One of the things that I started, or something I applied for to see how it goes at the end of last year, was Amazon affiliates. So I actually have affiliate links in the description of all my videos now. Like all of them. I put those in all of the videos that I have so far. Because you have to do it manually in case you didn't know. But yeah, so I have affiliate link for this eraser, the mono. And for what else? For the Tombow pencils and the black wing pencils, because I like those quite a lot. Even though, you know, you don't need, it's been mentioned that you don't need fancy tools, of course, when you're doing any kind of art-related thing necessarily, especially when you're making a sketch. But the reason I like those pencils, in particular the black wing, is because the lead, meaning the graphite itself, is very, very smooth. It's very finely milled. I don't know if it's happened to you when you have kind of like a chintzy sort of pencil. The lead will have like a little rock. And that rock will, you know, when you get to that point in the lead, will make a groove in your pencil, in your paper. And then that's impossible to remove because it has, you know, it's made kind of like, I'm gonna do it with my nail here. It's made like that on your paper, and it's like there's no way you're straightening that out. Or I mean, I guess you can if you like spritz the paper with water or something, but then who knows how that's going to affect the rest of the integrity of the rest of the paper. But anyway, so this is the type of stuff that little rocks on cheap, really cheap pencils, in the lead of really cheap pencils will do. And I have not encountered a single one of those in all of the black wings I've used. I also like Tombow, but it has happened maybe once that I found a little rock in a Tombow, but it has not happened as often. But Tombow are my second favorite of pencils for that reason. I guess part of the reason for the Tombows is also because I just understand their grading. And not that I think you need all the grades of pencil in order to make a nice drawing, but I'm just more familiar with it. So like I typically will go for a B or a 2B with Tombows, you know. But with Blackwing is like what is it, the 602, Pearl, and Matte, and all these names, and it's cool in the sense that I can still make one drawing with one of the pencils and not a problem. But it's just something about the familiarity. And well, I guess if you're curious, the 602 is kind of like an intermediate hardness. Pearl is a little bit harder. Matte is softer. But, and I think I've mentioned it in the shading videos, you should practice the skill. I mean, in the video that I talk about shading with just one pencil, with just pencil, you should absolutely practice the skill of making a really good degradation of tone using just one pencil. And you certainly can with any of those Blackwing pencils that I just mentioned. All right, so this is the waterline that I, bottom waterline, and it kind of fades out into that inner corner like that. You may notice it when you look at other people's eyes, may not, but it's there. It depends. And it's definitely more often visible than the top waterline because of the kind of orientation of the top and bottom lash lines. I'll show you in a tiny additional drawing here on the side. So you have your eyeball, and if you remember, like the top is kind of more sticky outy than the bottom of the eye, or maybe down here because I have more room. I'm gonna go around here like this. So you know, this is your globe, and the top lid comes out like this. The bottom lid comes down like this. So then this is like the exposed, this is the water line right here, these lines that I weighed a bit more there. And is this blurry? That is so annoying. I keep looking at my computer screen to make sure that this thing is focused. Or maybe I should do it more because I wasn't. No, it looks like it's out of focus. That's really annoying. What do I do? But anyway, because the top lid comes down this way, just because of the way it comes down, you can see that the exposed waterline is, you know, this is the side view. It's not exposed for view necessarily, and it's further obscured by the lashes, which we'll talk about in a bit because I think I will draw some lashes. Because lashes come out kind of like in this area, like right here. It's just like the corner of where your normal skin meets the waterline. Here, okay? So the top lashes go like this. It's kind of like a comma, right? And the bottom one's the same, like that. And then, but you see here in the bottom that this little shelf is like more available for view. It's like more exposed just because it's kind of farther down like that. Okay? Okay, so I don't know why the camera's trying to ruin my life right now. Can you, like, focus? That's your job. This thing isn't even that old, bro. Finally. Alright. Oh, something else that I forgot on top of the eyeball. I mean, the surface of this exposed globe is the following. The highlight or glare or whatever it's called, I don't know. So typically I place that on top of the pupil, like this, and in the top half of this exposed, or you know, like above this. I mean, it depends where the light source is coming from, but and then I leave this untouched. No, I mean, there's a little bit of the graphite left there, but whatever. There's a lot of white there. So the reason that's there right now is because that is the highest point of the cornea, which is a see-through lens. All right, and it is very helpful that it's sharp, that its edges are sharp, and that it is next to this pupil, and that the pupil is dark. So what does that mean? That means the pupil is one of the darkest darks, if not the darkest dark in the eye. Okay, and the highlight is one of the lightest lights, if not the lightest light. So if you put those two together, you have a lot of contrast. And what that does is that it makes that highlight kind of look like it's in front of the pupil. And it makes the eye, this area of the eyes in general, like, you know, call the attention of the viewer. Okay. Next, oh, top lid. Eyelids, all right. So, I don't know if you know, if you have hooded lids or not, but by watching a bunch of makeup videos, I learned that I have hooded lids, like really fucking hooded. Right? So I tend to draw people whose lids are visible because I kind of wish mine were visible for makeup purposes. All right, so we have something like this. And, you know, depending, sometimes you see this type of thing. But, you know, that depends. This isn't a lid necessarily, like the same this way this one is. It's kind of like something that goes farther back. But I think I'm gonna remove that. Okay. From the lower lid, there might be something like this. And maybe something like this. Not super marked or anything. You know, it depends on the person's age. Sometimes, and I have kind of something like this, this inner part of the lid sort of continues and sort of hugs this inner corner in a way. Sort of like this. And it kind of continues to make the socket. or what's that called? Makeup people call it like the hollow. Fucking forgot what it's called. Whatever. All right. So there. Okay. All right. I think it's eyebrow time. This is something I have that I quite enjoy, and that's having eyebrows close to the eye and, you know, the lid. And besides having hooded lids, my eyebrows are also close to my eyes, so that leaves next to no real estate for makeup. But whatever. It happens. Right, so I'm just making a rough shape. And then even with the hooded lids on this small real estate, I still like that my eyebrows are close to my eyes like that because it looks cool. All right, and then okay. So if you remember, because I think I mentioned this in the previous video of the small portrait, the inner medial part of the eyebrow supposedly, you know, typically is made to start at the kind of like the edge of the nostril. So like if the person's nostril is around, you know, the nose is around here, kind of like this. You know, you're supposed to take your pencil, your brow pencil or whatever, and go like this, and then this is where your eyebrow starts, or something like that, you know? Or at the very least kind of like aligned with this inner corner of the eye, something like that. But I like it when they start a little bit farther in. And for the outer corner, supposedly, you also align your pencil with the outer part of your nose and your outer corner, and supposedly that's where your eyebrow ends. That's cool if you want to do that, but I like it like this. Okay, and so we have an eyeball here that looks okay. And let me put some stuff on this eyebrow. So, the eyebrow, of course, it doesn't have the same amount of hair throughout the eyebrow. It's just like, well, not just like, but similar to the hair on your head that, you know, it kind of transitions into. And for this, I'm just using my pencil on its side and kind of going straight up, just up and down here, and then kind of slanting the pencil itself sideways a little bit, and it seems to be imitating kind of like the generalized direction of brow hair pretty well. But here on the back, I lifted the pencil and I'm just using the tip now, and I'm slanting it like that. Okay. Right, so I started saying that because I like starting the eyebrow here, like farther in that it's, you know, quote unquote supposed to, but I like fading it out, all right, because, you know, I mean, my eyebrows do that and I like it just fine. So I kind of do something like this, and then lighter hairs like that, all right? And so, all right, where is it? So my root of the nose, or nacyon, would be like around here. And I have some eyebrow hairs that kind of trace, they're very small, kind of trace this little curve here. And so I like to do that too. Okay. All right, so that looks okay. I want to add a little bit of, what am I doing? Let me just, I'm not sure why I'm doing this right now, but I kind of want to. And listen, the brush, I think I mentioned it in the video about making shadows with this. It's a tool, just like any other tool, but I find it particularly addictive, kind of, for some reason. Same with the powdered charcoal or graphite, which is the thing that you typically use this with. But remember that you can go back and forth between this and the pencil and any of your other tools, okay? And you should, because this is all lighter in color now, right? And I guess what I wanted was to kind of even out the color, the surface, because of the grain of the paper. And, you know, I kind of did that, but it's a pretty rough paper. I mean, I don't actually like this paper, but I wanted to use this just for the sake of this pad, just for the sake of using it. I don't even know what paper it is. It's a pad that I stitched with Coptic stitch. But I don't like the paper, and I don't know what the paper is, so I don't know how to avoid it in the future. Anyway, the thing is that eyebrows typically are pretty dark looking in this area here, toward the inner, towards the medial aspect. Not this part that fades into the nose in the middle, obviously. So I don't know if you can tell, but a lot of drawing is just kind of noting details like that, and then drawing them. So another thing that I have noticed, you know, it might not be super accurate in other people, but I think I've noticed it in me, or maybe it's the angle at which I was looking at my eyebrows. But this part seems pretty sharp here, like this part here, this curve. Meaning that there's, you know, there are no obvious hairs coming there. Although, you know, you can obviously still do it, but what the sharpness is meant to kind of convey is that that part of the forehead. Can I do that here? Or I should do it here, maybe on the side. That part of the forehead is kind of going, you know, in like that. So then these eyebrow hairs are coming out of here like this. So then this would look like a sharp line, or a sharper line than the other ones. Okay, so then that's kind of like the reasoning behind that. Okay, so this part is darker. The orientation of eyebrow hairs or something, it's kind of like I did here, but you should still observe that in your subject, or, you know, in your own if you're doing a self-portrait. You know, it's kind of like this, and then they start slanting back. And when you get to the tail back here, you have two paths of eyebrows, of two directions of hairs. Okay? Well, I guess there's a little bit of that in the top too. And, you know, that makes kind of like the overall shape of the eyebrow. And, you know, they might go like this also, you know? But that's a generalized thing. You should note what you're looking at. But, you know, that's a good guide. Okay. Alright, so this part is relatively sharp. Then back here, where this part of the brow bone is more rounded, not as sharp as this part here, it's more rounded like this, so the hairs are sort of like this on it. So it's easier to see sort of like the bottom ones. So you will see, you know, unless the person plucks their eyebrows and draws them on, you will see hairs like where they're coming from, like that. Okay? And yeah, something like that. And towards the end, the lateral end of the eyebrow fades a little bit. They get pretty small back there. Until you end up having, or at least I certainly do, stray hairs even, like, kind of like this. But, you know, again, people might pluck that out or not. And alright. Here in the towards the middle, the hairs also kind of start to fade out similarly to the outer corner And so you can make a little shadow degradation there and then have some hairs kind of coming out like that. Okay, now let's put some shadows here. First shadow is the following, is the shadow caused by the top lid. And that is going to be even, meaning that it's going to be the same across the surface of the eyeball. So like all across the globe. So I'm going to do light coming from around here, okay? Okay, you know, roughly. And a little bit on the lower lid. Okay, so you started there, that's good. Okay, so these two membranes here, these two tissues here, are not white the way the sclera is. So I'm gonna bring them down in tone a little bit, like that. What else? Oh, and also they're probably gonna be in shadow just because they're kind of like farther in, because this globe, it's the sticky outiest like here, right? Also, the globe itself has shadow, of course, because it's a sphere from in here. Lighter touch than the other one. Something like that. And probably also a little bit from the bottom, like this. Because there's this shadow from the sphere down here, okay? And well, that's helping to add a little bit of tone to the waterline, which similarly to this tissue here is not white. Something like that. Okay. Let's go a little bit farther back. I need a bitty bit more shadow, actually. Very light hand. Okay, now let me put some shadow on the lids themselves. So if you see from this drawing, from this little diagram type thing down here, I'm gonna make these lids more liddy to hopefully help me illustrate what I'm trying to do up here. So, as you know, lids fold, all lids fold. And so this is the top lid and it folds over like this. And then you go up to that other fleshy part. The bottom lid folds in a different way. It kind of has like this and then down like this. Sometimes it's straight, but it's always going to have a bit of a shadow down there. Or, you know, it usually will. And so, that's what I'm going to try to do here. So that shadow is here, this one right here. But I'm gonna leave it slightly lighter in this area, just like I'm leaving this lighter here. I'm gonna exaggerate that a little to remind me what I'm trying to do. Okay, top lid. This area here is usually in shadow, usually. Pretty often it's in shadow. So I'm going to apply a tone over all of that. I think of it as a little cave or a cavern. Okay? Now, because of this part here where the top lid folds into itself, I'm going to make a very small shadow here, going all along the top lid, on the top part of the lid. But it's very, very small, okay? Very close to the first line I made, like that. I guess this was more like a wrinkle type thing, more than this type of fold. Especially if the person is, I think, a little bit younger, you know? Anyway, okay. Let's see. So the top lid is also not going to be all lit like this. So we fade it, try to fade this out a little bit towards, using this as a guide around this area here. We try to leave this the lightest, but it's mostly going to be covered, including back here. Though this is obviously, I mean, this shouldn't be necessarily as dark as this in this situation where we have light coming from like here, kind of like this, okay? Okay, now what do I want to do? I'm going to extend this a little bit like this, and back here, there is kind of, you know, if you're doing makeup, you have your cat eye, which is, it's kind of accentuating that because it helps to lift the outer corner of the eye, which is something you might want to do if you're putting on makeup. I'm still looking up the placement for that on myself, especially because of the hooded lids. So let's start something like this. Because I want a natural sort of one, not one made with makeup, because obviously I'm not drawing with makeup, am I? Yes. And this kind of makes a curve like this. You know, it depends. But this is kind of like the generalized trajectory of it. You know, the angle of it changes, you know, but it's a path from the inner corner, the exterior corner of the eye to the exterior corner of the eyebrow. And, you know, exactly width and what shape it has, it depends. You have to look at your reference, and I think I'm going to shorten that eyebrow now. Because I think it's unreasonably long now. Or maybe it's more accurate to say it's unreasonably dark that over there. Okay, better. All right, so yeah, see, so darker here. And lighter back here. Okay. I'm gonna make this even, well, yes, darker, but more like fill in these things, because that's the thing about pupils, okay? I think of them as the universe, just because it looks like this void sort of black, even though obviously it's just because, you know, it looks like there's no light in there. That's why they look that way. And that's the reason why they must be this color. Just as dark, matte as possible. Because also, it doesn't have a surface. These are not on the surface like the cornea, upon which this highlight is, okay? So you should think about that when you're drawing your eye, because you don't want to have your pupil look rounded as if it is on the surface of a sphere, because that is not the way that eyes are. Okay, I'm just saying, if you do that, it's going to look like a contact, like the colored contacts, which is easy, very, very easy to tell for that same reason, because the iris is no longer kind of sunken in. It's like a flat disc. It's on top of the rounded cornea, so that's why you can easily tell when it's a contact. I have no problem with those. I'm just saying it's pretty obvious. All right, let's try to use this tip to fill in. I mean, I don't know if I don't like blending stumps really very much at all, even though I still made a video. But you know, of course they have your uses. Every tool has its use. So right now I'm using it to fill in these parts of that first shadow that I made. You know what's going to be really cool? When the days are long again. That's going to be cool as shit. Okay. I'm going to apply a very light tone here, because that typically has some degree of shadow, because the brow bone is this inferior part of it is a downward plane. Okay. That means that I'm going to have to work on this other thing I wanted to work on, but I'm going to might have to use the powdered charcoal if I want to keep using the brush. Okay. All right, I think that's looking all right so far. All right, so note that there's several lines that have become a lot softer, like this top one. Like, it isn't as harsh as this. I should totally soften this, because, well, you know, we're not made of lines, of course. Okay, so then within the shadow, there are things that are, of course, darker than others. They're not all the same color. And it's kind of part of where you have to make certain decisions of, you know, where you want to place those things. Especially because I'm drawing from imagination. I'm going to do a bunch of tapping because I'm doing this. So, you know, do not breathe this powder or any powder ever. Unless you're asthmatic and you have like a prescribed thing. That's not the same thing. Okay, but anyway, I'm tapping it like a million times because I do not want an excess of this stuff. I want to err on not on having very little than too much. Okay, so right, I'm gonna put more here for sure. Okay, and if you notice, what I did is cover kind of this trapezoidal shape. Okay, not this entire thing, because, you know, the surface of this surface is not like a flat ribbon. And I'm not verbally adept enough to explain that, but it's kind of flatter here. You know, it's like flat and forward here, and then if you go farther up this way, it kind of turns. I mean, it depends. So that's kind of what I'm visualizing. And then this part will be rounded. Like this. Something like that. Gonna fade that out a little bit. I also want to make this cavern part. Okay, but what do I do? I'm looking at a drawing now, one of my drawings. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm doing it. I'd like to use a bigger brush. Alright. Let's get up first. I hardly ever talk about this brush. I don't think I've ever mentioned it until now, but it's this one, and I don't because it's fucking absurd compared to the teeny tiny one, but I just wanna rip some things of the socket here. Because a lot of things are actually, I mean, obviously they're not gonna be like the lightest light, so they have to be just a teeny tiny bit. Not much, you know, but a little. Okay. Alright, third time dropping that. What I'm doing here is softening that bottom line. And what you do is that you make kind of like this shape with your kneading eraser and then flatten it out. And then that should be helpful. I guess I can just do those tones again. Anyway, okay. Alright, so as I mentioned in both the brush and the pencil too, the videos about making shadows with that stuff, you have to be careful about the pressure that you apply. Because if you apply too much pressure, and it's possible with pencil, brush, and blending stump, you will burnish your paper, meaning that you're going to flatten out the grain, the tooth of your paper. And that means it's going to be really shiny and flat, and it won't be able to hold on to any more material. Meaning that you won't be able to make it darker, and it's going to be stained. You won't be able to erase it. So be careful about that, or aware at least. I'm just saying because, you know, it happens. Not to mention that if you put your hand on your paper like I'm doing, you know, the oil of your skin is gonna really make it hard to erase, and it's gonna spread graphite around. So keep that in mind too. Well, the oil from your hand is gonna make it fucking impossible to erase. It's gonna be just stained there forever. I think I marked that way too much. More dipping and tapping. Dip tap. Okay, that was quiet for a bit, but if you look at the iris, this area is lighter than the very edge of it. Because, you know, that edge is where it sinks in and becomes flat on the surface of the globe of the eye. All right? And then there's a very short, sharp degradation there. That is kind of like this, which is what I'm trying to do here. Now, because the disc of the iris is sunken in on the surface of the globe of the eyeball, it's also not like its shadow is not going to it's not going to strictly follow that of the surface of the eye. So then that's why I brought it down a teeny tiny bit, because it's sunken in. There should be some tone here, though I typically leave this alone, just because I like how it looks. But a little bit of tone is okay. That's what I was saying about the addiction to the brush and the blending stump. I just feel like I have better control with the pencil. And what I want to do is make this a little bit darker, okay? Sometimes this shadow here that's made by the upper lid, it almost looks like it melts into this degradation I was talking about here. Meaning that these falling edges kind of are made more rounded in a way. Trying to even out the color of it a bit. All right, I think we're nearing completion of this. And while this was an eyeball from imagination, I was roughly looking at a self-portrait that I have here on my wall. But otherwise, this was free-handed, as all my drawings are. Let me know what you think. If you found it helpful, if you found it interesting, if you already apply these things, or if you had already thought about them but explained in a different way. If so, how, what way was that? Remember that I have affiliate links now. I'm trying those out, and I have about 6 months to make I don't know how many sales. But if I don't make enough sales, then I have to try again. So if anything under there you find helpful, it's at no additional cost to you, or if it's an object that you already want. I said something about lashes, didn't I? All right, I haven't done that in a while. That's for frickin' sure. All right, here we go. right, so I haven't done that in a long ass time. All right. So remember what we said at first about the top water line being, I don't know, maybe not exactly horizontal to like the floor, but you know, kind of. So then if the lash line comes down and then up, kind of like a check mark or like a comma, okay, so this curve is going to be, it's almost going to make its own line. Because see, the lid line that I drew is here, and then the lashes are at some point making a line a little bit farther down. Okay, so, and then they curve up sharply. Right, so then also remember, if you have like the top view of the eye, it's a sphere like this. And so you have the lashes at different, sticking out at different angles like this. Okay, so then the lashes on the outer corner and the inner corner are going to be more in profile, like this, kind of a hair, if you think of a lash hair. And then the ones at the very highest point here on the middle are going to be, it's like, if this is the profile one, then one of these seen from the front might just look like this, because the curve is like hidden back here. And then if you have a lash a little bit to the side, the curve is going to be really sharp, like that. So it's coming from the lid like this, okay? So you kind of think of, you have your top lid, middle lashes are kind of like that. Then this section of the lid, that you start seeing a sharp curve like that. And then when you get to the outer corner, each outer corner, the curve is bigger. The curve is wider. Okay? And we have this again here, like I was saying, this section that is beyond the line of the top lid. And, you know, if you want to make natural lashes, remember that they're not like the false lashes. The false lashes that want to look more natural, they kind of cross each other like that, because lashes are not all orderly right next to each other. The follicles are in different places, so, and kind of pointing in different directions, so you want to make one straight up, one that's crossing it, and one that's crossing it from the other side, like this type of stuff. Okay? And well, because the lower lid is facing up like that, you have something similar. But you know, they're shorter. Typically not as thick as the top ones, or abundant, I think. Alright, I think I'm gonna leave this here. Thank you very much for watching. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you enjoyed it. Tell me if you found it helpful. Tell me if it was fun. Tell me if you got any of the materials and the links that I have down there. I also have links for a tip jar, my imprint store where you can buy prints of my drawings, my website where you can just buy my drawings from there, my blog, Instagram also. Say hi on Instagram too, and say hi here too. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think about stuff and like all those other questions that I asked. And well, thank you again, and have a lovely